What is up, everybody? Purple and Gold podcast for Monday, August 24th, 2026. LSU and Clemson now 12 days away. I didn't do my normal wardrobe change here. I am wearing an LSU adjacent shirt, though. This is an Alex Bregman Cubs shirt. Getting ready for Cubs and Dodgers tonight at 8:40 p.m. at Chase Field. Alex Bregman's done a great job turning his season around. He's really helped the Cubs. On to the news of the day relative to LSU's football team, and that is another commitment from a class of 2022 player in the TRO, and it comes from former Ole Miss defensive lineman Xzavian Harris. Harris was in training camp with the New Orleans Saints. He was cut roughly 2 weeks ago. He was one of 3 Ole Miss players included in that TRO, and he now has announced his intention to transfer and join LSU. Earlier today, it seemed like they might have been a little apart on money, but whatever needed to be ironed out was ironed out, and Xzavian Harris is in the fold. And just like I said about Daquan Wright yesterday, he's going to help LSU. LSU's got a 5-man rotation at defensive tackle. It includes 2 true freshmen. It includes 2 guys in Stephylan Green and Malik Blockton, who are transfers, who haven't always had the amount of production that maybe you would want. And it includes Don McKinley, who certainly has played a lot of snaps with mixed results. I think Harris immediately is in the top 2 or 3 in the rotation, and he's going to help LSU, assuming he can pick up Blake Baker's defense by the time they play Clemson. But certainly you would think very early in the year he would be able to help. I assume he's in relatively good football shape, being that he was in an NFL training camp as recently as 2 weeks ago. I don't know if there are some fences that had to be mended. Xzavian Harris had a lot to say in the days leading up to the Sugar Bowl about Lane Kiffin and the way he left, and Pete Golding being a real head coach and blah, blah, blah. All of that seems to be water under the bridge now, though, as Harris did not go back and play for Pete Golding, but he signed up to play for Lane Kiffin and LSU. One of the things I failed to mention in yesterday's podcast is Will Wade also got a big commitment from former UCLA point guard Donovan Dent. Dent is another 5th-year guy, one of those class of 2022 guys. He got a TRO in California to be granted a 5th year, and he is signed on to play for Will Wade. That gives Will Wade 6 players, pending the 4 international additions, which you would think would have to be announced this week. Classes begin today at LSU. Will Wade had said all along that by the first week of school they would have a roster to announce. Now, let me talk a little bit about what I'm sure a lot of you are seeing on social media, or if you watch ESPN, or if you listen to Sirius Radio or any of these kinds of things. You are going to see LSU be villainized. You're going to see Lane Kiffin the narrative continue to be that LSU is somehow doing something wrong in the Daquan Wright, Xzavian Harris, soon to be Jack Pyburn additions. LSU's not doing anything wrong. What is awesome about LSU's coaching staff now is that Will Wade and Lane Kiffin are just not afraid to be first. And make no mistake about it, Lane Kiffin is first in getting players who have been waived out of the NFL, but LSU was not the first school to do this. Indiana added 2 of their defensive players back through a TRO. Texas, weeks ago, got an offensive lineman, Cole Hudson, back on their team, who had been in minicamp with the Browns and Cowboys. And you're going to see a flood this week of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of court filings and court proceedings and TROs that are going to, it's already flooding in on social media, that are going to allow these guys to come back and play. I've been asked a lot about what this means going forward. And I do want to point out, going forward, this will not be a problem. Starting now in 2026, in the fall sports, you have 5 years to play 5. There won't be any of this going to the NFL, getting cut, coming back. This is a very specific group of players. These are players from the 2022 recruiting class who played all 4 years. Their argument is, had their eligibility not been up when this rule was passed in July, they would not have signed with pro teams and they would have taken advantage of the 5th year. I do blame the NCAA for all of this. I think the thing that I blame the NCAA for, a lot of people are going to blame the NCAA and say they should have given a blanket waiver to all of the 2022 kids. That I don't agree with. I think the 2022 kids were just dealt a dose of bad luck. And I think in life, sometimes life is hard, sometimes life is not fair, and they should have had to learn that life is not fair. What I think the NCAA should have done is wait until August, pass the 5 for 5. Now it's in place going forward. All of these players they wouldn't have time or knowledge to be able to do all of this. But now that it's done, and now that you've got judges who are willing to give temporary restraining orders to allow these players to come back into college football, if they are eligible, why not? Lane Kiffin said today at his media availability that he told the team they are in a current, relentless pursuit to make the roster the best that it can possibly be. I feel the same way about Will Wade. I feel the same way about Kim Mulkey. I feel the same way about Jay Johnson. I feel the same way about Jay Clark. This is the job of a coach. And you can make no bones about this. If LSU didn't take Daquan Wright or Xzavian Harris, someone else would have. And you can't not play the game. Look at what's happened to Florida State. Look at what's happened to Nebraska. Look at what's happening to Dabo Swinney when he wouldn't really play the transfer portal game the first couple of years, right? There are no more roll out your helmet, you're a blue blood, right? Alabama doesn't get free points because they won all those national titles. Indiana is the defending national champion. So, I don't agree with this. I've said it. My position on this, going all the way back to Charles Bediako, going back to some of these other basketball players who came out of the G League, my position on this remains unchanged. I think this is bonkers. I think if you sign a professional contract, you should not come back to college sports. This particular group, though, the class of 2022, who has played 4 years and is eligible for a 5th year, they're being allowed to come back. So you know what? Saddle up. This is not going to be the end. LSU is going to add Jack Pyburn. I think LSU is looking for a cornerback. I think LSU is probably looking for 1 or 2 other players. I've been asked a little bit about roster spots. It's been sort of out there that LSU probably had a roster spot or 2 open. So you look at the Notre Dame edge, you look at Daquan Wright, and you say, okay, now we get into Xzavian Harris. Does LSU have to cut a player? I don't know. Damian Shanklin, one of their edge players, hasn't been with the team in over a week. Feels like a discipline issue. Is he somebody that is allowed to be let go off the team to create a roster spot? Are there walk-ons that are grandfathered in? Is there anybody with a medical condition that would allow them no longer to play? I don't know any of that. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying if LSU is going to continue to add players here, they may, in fact, have to evaluate and address the roster. That'll probably do it for today. We're going to be back in a more regular podcasting mode here as LSU and Clemson are 12 days away. And eventually we're actually going to talk about a football game. I don't know when, because LSU is going to continue to add these guys. And look, this week is going to be crazy because a lot of these players who know they're about to get cut off NFL teams are going to file their temporary restraining orders this week. So when they're cut on Saturday, they can walk into a college building on Sunday or Monday and be ready to go to potentially play Labor Day weekend in college football. We'll be here to cover it all, and we'll be here to discuss anything that LSU does, of course. Lane Kiffin, very forthright in his press conference today relative to adding these players, relative to, what he wants to do, in leaving no stone unturned. And I think LSU's a lot better off for having Daquan Wright, Xzavian Harris. They will have Jack Pyburn, I believe that soon. And we will be here to talk all about it. As always, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Be good to one another. Hold the rope. Always boot up. And always, 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 go Tigers.